My name's Rachel, and I don't like telling people that I once hitchhiked. It's one of those things you admit and people automatically respond with, "What were you thinking?" And honestly, I ask myself that sometimes too. But when you're stuck on the side of the road in late October, sun going down, phone at 6%, and your car coughing its last mile, you start looking at your options differently. I was 25 at the time, finishing up classes at college and working a part-time job at a bookstore. My old Honda Civic wasn't exactly dependable, but it usually did its job. Get me to work, get me to campus, and maybe out to Lucky Peak on weekends if I was feeling restless. That day, I was supposed to head back from visiting a friend outside of town, and halfway home the car sputtered, shook, then it just stalled out and left me sitting there on the shoulder in the middle of nowhere. It wasn't even a dramatic breakdown. No smoke, no explosion, just silence. I remember sitting there, staring at the dead dashboard, muttering to myself like, "Perfect, great timing, exactly what I needed." There was no service where I'd stopped. Not surprising, but frustrating. The road was a 2-lane stretch with nothing around but fields. I stood outside the car with my arms crossed, trying to look like I had it under control, but really I was running through my very limited plan. Wait for someone, hope they had a phone signal, maybe beg for a ride to the nearest gas station. It wasn't long before a dusty blue pickup slowed down. The driver rolled his window halfway and called out, "Car trouble?" He looked to be in his late 40s, stocky, with thinning brown hair and a calm voice. "Yeah," I said, stepping closer. "It just died on me. No service out here." He nodded like he'd expected that answer. "I can give you a lift into town. Closest station's about 10 miles up." I didn't want to. Every safety lecture I'd ever gotten from my mom replayed in my head, but the sun was dipping fast and my options were basically non-existent. I told myself people offered rides all the time out here. This wasn't Los Angeles, this was Idaho. Folks were supposed to be decent. So I grabbed my backpack, locked the Civic, and climbed in. The cab smelled like cigarettes and something sweet. Maybe air freshener clipped to the vent. The dashboard was cluttered with receipts and fast food napkins. Not messy enough to be alarming, but enough to notice. "Appreciate it," I said, buckling in. "No problem," he replied. "Name's Rick." I told him mine. We made the usual small talk. What I studied, what I did for work, how cars always seem to break down at the worst times. He chuckled at that, said something about Murphy's Law. For the first 10 minutes, it felt almost normal. Just a stranger doing a good deed. But then I noticed something that shifted everything. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement in the back seat. At first, I thought it was just the blanket, one of those gray wool ones you see in camping stores, sliding around with the bumps in the road. But the way it bulged, the way it lifted slightly and then settled, it didn't look like fabric. It looked like someone was under it. I looked back quickly. The blanket was tucked in oddly tight along the seat, like something or someone was hidden beneath it. Rick noticed my look in the rearview mirror. He looked up, then back to the road. He didn't say anything. I forced myself to look away, trying to brush off the creeping worry. People toss all sorts of junk in their back seats. Maybe it was just gear, camping stuff, a duffel bag, anything. But then, as we slowed near an intersection, I swear I saw the blanket rise, like a chest inflating with breath. I felt a tight pull in my stomach. I tried to stay calm, running through excuses to get out. Maybe ask to stop at a gas station bathroom. Maybe say I forgot something in my car. Then the doors clicked. The locks slid down automatically, one by one. I didn't touch them. Rick didn't say a word. He just kept driving. I could feel my heartbeat in my neck as I adjusted my posture, trying not to let it show. Hey, could you drop me at the station in town? My friend's coming to meet me there. Sure, he said casually, like we were talking about the weather. Station's a bit past this stretch. I nodded, trying to look normal, but my eyes kept darting to that lump in the back. Whoever it was, they hadn't moved much, just stayed still, waiting. We hit a red light. My hand went for the door handle. Instinct. But when I tried, it wouldn't budge. Locked tight. That was the moment I realized I had to think fast. I leaned forward slightly, pressing my hand to my stomach. Oh man, I think that diner food earlier messed me up. I might throw up. Rick looked at me, skeptical. I'm serious, I said, adding a gagging sound for effect. If I don't get out, it's going to be all over your seat. He swore low and swung over toward the shoulder. The truck slowed, pulling just enough off the road. The second I heard the locks click up, I yanked the handle and bolted. I didn't look back, I just ran. Backpack bouncing, legs pumping harder than they ever had. I could hear the truck door slam behind me, but I didn't wait to see if Rick or whoever was under that blanket followed. Up ahead, thank God, was a gas station. It wasn't big, just one of those off-highway places, but it was enough. I sprinted straight inside, ignoring the stairs, and begged the clerk to call the police. By the time officers showed up, the truck was long gone. I told them everything. They took notes, asked for a description, and one of them finally said, "You're not the first to mention something like this." Apparently, there had been other reports of pairs. One driver, one hidden, trying to lure or trap hitchhikers along certain stretches near Boise. No one had been caught. That night, I sat in a diner with the police report and my hands shaking around a mug of coffee. I couldn't stop picturing that blanket. The way it had shifted, the way the person under it never showed their face. I've never hitchhiked since, won't even accept a ride from someone I don't know. I check my car obsessively now before road trips, double-check my phone battery, triple-check my gas. The scariest part wasn't the stranger offering help. It was the stranger I didn't see, waiting in the back seat. I was a couple days into a solo photo run through Arkansas when it happened. May 2021, everything green and damp and buzzing with insects. I'd been shooting old storefronts and weathered signs, the sort of side project I like between paid gigs. My cooler held waters and a leftover biscuit. My camera bag was wedged under a towel in the back. That afternoon, I spotted him. Thumb out, backpack slouched by his boot, holding a cardboard sign. Toward Hazel, anywhere close. He looked like he'd been in the sun too long, cap-stained and pink skin. I slowed because that's what I do. He leaned in the window, grinned quick and grateful. "You're a lifesaver," he said. "Hop in. I'm not going far, but I'll get you closer." He buckled up like someone used to catching rides. Said his name was Rob. Or Ross, I wasn't sure. He talked easy at first, about fixing small engines, about his mom living by some river I hadn't heard of. He pointed out places that used to be good and laughed at a church sign that read, "Jesus fixes what Google can't." For a while, it was nothing but harmless, small talk. We hit a construction site. A flagger stopped us, the heat rolling in through the windows. Rob tapped the dash. "Want to skip this mess? There's a cut-through." He pulled out a folded county map, soft with use. His finger traced a route, a squiggle through nowhere. "Old County 8. Hang a right by the creek. You'll pop back past the construction. Easy." It felt adventurous, and I didn't feel like sitting in line. So I turned. At first, it looked like any back road. 2-lane, mailboxes shaped like tractors, tarps covering boats. Then the yards thinned, power lines disappeared, and the trees crowded in. A brown sign read, "Bridge out ahead." "We're not going that far," Rob said. "Next left." The road was 2 gray ruts in the grass. GPS gave up completely. "Shortcut," he said, smiling. I eased onto it. Dust rose. Leaves brushed the mirrors. I remember thinking it was just another back road I'd forget in a week, but I noticed marker ribbons tied on trees, faded and mud-streaked. Hunting tape, maybe. "You ever shoot wildlife?" he asked suddenly. "Not really." "Shame. Out here, you just point and wait long enough, you'll see something." His voice carried a different weight now. The humming he'd been doing stopped. The ruts dipped, a white ribbon this time, a short length of chain thrown in the ditch. I invented explanations. Old survey markers, hunters, kids fooling around, but none of them settled the knot in my gut. "Veer left where it looks wrong," he said, pointing. The split ahead showed 2 options. Right, brighter, still worn. Left, darker, sinking under the pines. Crushed beer cans gleamed in the weeds at the fork. "How much longer?" I asked. 10, he answered too quick. I steered left. The ground softened and the tires lost some grip. A faint trail cut into the woods looked like it had been stamped down, then abandoned. "Crack the windows," he said. "Easier to hear if anyone's coming." "Coming?" It echoed in my head. We rolled past a clearing, black scars in the dirt, the imprint where something heavy had sat. "This is faster," he said, but his smile was gone. He kept folding the map, smaller and smaller, until it looked like something he could hide in his palm. We crossed a wash. On the far side, 2 boots sat upright in the weeds, facing the trees. Not tossed, placed. "I'm turning around," I said. "You're fine. Another mile." "I'm turning around." My hand went to the shifter. "Don't." His hand didn't touch me, but it hovered like he might push it back. Forward's easier, safer. But I eased into reverse. That's when he unbuckled. The seatbelt clicked. He shoved the door open and jumped out while the car was rolling, stumbled once, then ran toward the trees ahead. He turned long enough to throw the words at me, "You'll regret this." Then he vanished into the woods. I slammed the door shut and crawled backward, eyes flicking between the mirrors and the road. Blue ribbons reappeared, then white, then nothing. Finally, the road widened, sunlight spilling through like a lifeline. I took the other fork, the one that stayed in the light, and soon asphalt appeared, power lines sagging into view. Civilization slid back into place. At the next gas station, I filled up, though my tank was nearly full. Bought a bottle of tea and a heat lamp slice of pizza. Checked the back seat twice. Nothing there but the faint outline where he'd sat. That night, I booked a cheap motel with the door facing the lot. Deadbolt, latch, chain, all locked. I sat on the bed, eating the cold leftover biscuit from my cooler, telling myself it meant everything was normal again. But I still scanned every seam of that room. Curtain gaps, the baseboards, the rhythmic clank of the air unit. Weeks later, back home, a headline caught me. Authorities search area near Old County Road after reports of missing man. Logging roads. Creek crossing. No map, no details, just enough to know it was close to where I'd been. I thought of his map, the numbers scribbled on its edge. 2 digits, a dash, 2 more. Not miles, not grid coordinates I recognized. Maybe dates, maybe tallies. When I tell the story now, I make it small. Just a road trip anecdote. Picked up a hitchhiker, got spooked, bailed. Let people laugh, tell me that's why you don't pick them up. Easy lesson, clean ending. But when I'm alone, I remember how deliberate he'd been. He waited until I was in reverse, until I had to split my focus, then told me I'd regret it. Not a plea, not a threat, a statement. Maybe he meant I'd regret not trusting him, that the road really did loop back. Maybe he meant I'd regret crossing him. Or maybe it wasn't about me at all. Maybe it was about whatever waited farther down that shaded track, something he knew better than to describe. I'll never know. What I do know is this. Whenever I see a dirt road veer left into shadow, I hear his voice again. This happened when I was 24 and working the front desk at a little hostel just off Cerritos Road in Santa Fe. June 2017, hot days, cool nights, and the smell of sunscreen and pancake batter always floating in the halls. The place attracted everyone. German hikers who somehow knew the bus routes better than locals, and college kids on dusty road trips. Most Tuesdays were errand days for me. I'd take the hostel's rattly Corolla to the bank, grab bulk supplies, and swing by the thrift shop that always put out blankets around noon. That's the day I picked up the man. He wasn't standing with his thumb out, more like lingering near the curb by the rail yard. Faded cap, sunburned skin, a pack with broken zippers. He didn't look like he wanted to ask for anything, but when I slowed and asked if he needed a ride, he nodded once and pointed down Guadalupe, motioning short distance with his fingers. He climbed in, buckled the seatbelt without a word, and held up a dog-eared card with an address. Near the tracks, someone had scribbled on it. That was all. I tried small talk. Weather, where he was from, whether he knew the hostel. Nothing. He sat forward, watching the windshield like it was a screen. His silence wasn't angry. It was just complete, like words weren't an option for him. 5 minutes later, he tapped the dash, signaled right, then left, then a little circle over his knee. I pulled up by an old muffler shop turned religious trinket store. He opened the door, gave me one last look like he was checking I was real, and stepped out. No thanks, no words. He just disappeared down the side street. By the time I finished the bank run and scored a blanket with a coyote stitched on it, I'd forgotten him. Back at the hostel, I reached into my canvas tote for a spare key and felt something cold and solid at the bottom. A thumb drive. Black, scratched, no label. I knew my bag. It wasn't mine. My coworker, Nora, shrugged. Could have fallen in. Don't put it in your laptop. Use the old Dell. So later, while guests shuffled through check-in and someone asked about the swamp cooler again, I gave in to curiosity. I slid the drive into that ancient Dell in the office. Folders appeared, all named with dates. The oldest one nearly a year back. I opened it. Photos. Hundreds. Women. All of them. Hitchhikers, bus stops, gas stations, motel porches. Candid angles. Through windshields, from passenger seats, out of car windows. No one looking at the camera. No one smiling. Just women, all caught mid-step or mid-weight. The next folder, more of the same. Women with backpacks, holding signs, filling water bottles. Same angles, same perspective. Whoever took them wasn't random. They knew what they were doing. I clicked through folder after folder, waiting for something normal. A family, a building, anything. It was all women. Then I opened the top folder, the one from 2 weeks ago. The first shots were familiar. A girl with a duffel outside a coffee shop, another at a gas station, then one of the road through a windshield, light spilling across the dash. And then, me. It was a photo from the back seat, angled at the driver's side. My messy bun, my cheap blue bead bracelet, even the strip of painter's tape I used to stop the AC vent from rattling. I was caught mid-word, hand on the radio. Date stamp exactly 14 days earlier. It wasn't zoomed from another car. Whoever took it had been behind me. The next photo showed the kid I dropped off that night, backpack in his lap, stepping out of the back seat. The next showed the empty passenger side. The next, the lamplight bending over the apartments where I left him. I sat there, staring. My skin felt wrong, like I'd forgotten to close a door. I hadn't logged that ride in the hostel book. It had seemed like nothing, just helping someone too young and tired to walk across town. He'd asked to sit in the back. I hadn't thought twice. Nora found me staring at the screen. "What is that?" I showed her. Her face tightened fast. "Don't open the folder with today's date." I yanked the drive out, and we called the police. An officer came, young and trying to look older. He listened, asked questions, bagged the drive like evidence, and promised to call. He gave me a case number on the back of his card. Then he left, and that was it. That night, the hostel courtyard glowed gold in the long June light. Guests laughed, played Uno, cooked noodles on the shared stove. It all looked harmless. But every time someone walked past the window, I checked for a cap pulled low, for raw knuckles, for a face I almost recognized. The officer never called back. Since then, I can't shake the image. Me driving, unaware, someone behind me lifting a camera. The detail of it, that stupid strip of painter's tape, proved it wasn't a mistake. Now, when I give someone a ride, it's only in the front seat. And whenever a man stands in the doorway wearing a cap, I study him for just a second too long, wondering if he's the one who dropped something in my bag. I was 19 in March 2016, driving my old Toyota Yaris back to campus after visiting my aunt in Cookeville. She'd loaded me up with foil-wrapped leftovers, so my backseat smelled like pound cake and green beans. It was later than I'd planned, but I cut off the interstate onto the 2-lane anyway, telling myself it was quicker. It was one of those empty roads, lined with old churches, country radio low. And then I saw her. A girl, maybe my age, standing by the shoulder with her hands covering her face. She was crying. No car, no bag, just her in the glow of my headlights. I pulled over, rolled the window down. "Hey, you okay?" She lowered her hands. Young. Hoodie, jeans, sneakers too white for the gravel. Tears streaked across her cheeks. "Do you need a ride?" I asked. She just nodded, walked around the front of my car, and climbed in. No hesitation, stared straight ahead. "I'm going toward Knoxville," I said. "I can drop you at the next gas station." "That's fine," she said, soft, barely louder than the vents. I offered water from the door. She took it, sipped once, then set it in her lap. For a couple minutes, the only sound was her sniffing in the engine. Then, without any build-up, she stopped crying. Just stopped. Her face went calm, dry, still. The silence sat heavy. Then she asked, "Do you live nearby?" "On campus," I said. "Alone?" "Roommates. They're home." I lied. "They expect you?" "Yeah, my mom does too. I told her I'd text." Another lie. She tapped the water bottle cap with her thumb. "Good." We rolled past a dark side road, the kind with a name like Hollow or Fork. She pointed at it. "That way's faster." "I'll stick to the main road," I said. "Less chance of getting lost." She didn't argue, just smirked, then went quiet again. A set of headlights appeared behind us, one brighter than the other, like a truck with a tired lens. They hung back, dipped out of sight, then reappeared. I didn't notice how hard I was holding it until my hands started to ache. "What's your building called?" she asked suddenly. "Volunteer Hall," I said before I could think of a cover. She smirked again. "I stayed somewhere like that once." The gaslight flicked on. Of course it did. I told her we'd stop at the next station. She didn't reply, just turned to look at me, then back to the window. The headlights stuck in the mirror, not close, not far. I turned into the glow of a pilot travel center. Semis lined the side lot. As soon as the concrete rolled under the tires, she unbuckled. "I'm just fueling," I said. "You need anything?" She didn't answer. She opened the door before I'd even stopped, slid out and walked quickly across the lot. She didn't look back, She rounded the corner of the building and vanished. I sat there, stunned, then got out and fueled. Inside, the clerk asked, "Pump?" I told him 2, then asked if he'd seen a girl. "The one crying?" he said. "Yeah, happens sometimes. Folks say she tests people, cries, gets in, then starts asking questions. Sometimes she leads drivers down the back roads, sometimes there's trucks waiting. Don't know if it's her choice or someone else's. Either way, you're smart to stop here." I left with a coffee I didn't want, fueled, and texted my mom that I was heading the rest of the way on the highway. The rest of the drive was wrong quiet. Every set of headlights in the mirror felt like that uneven truck until it passed and turned into a family sedan. By the time I reached campus, I felt wrung out, like I'd worked a shift I hadn't signed up for. A week later, back in Cookeville, a man at another gas station warned me without me even asking, "Don't take the county roads at night. There's a girl who checks if you'll be missed, leads some folks where they shouldn't go." Maybe the crying was bait. Maybe the questions were her way of measuring whether I was safe or expendable. Or maybe she was trapped in something herself, testing drivers to decide who she could risk involving. I stick to the highway now. I fill up before the light nags me, and whenever I pass a shoulder with someone hunched over in the dark, I drive to the nearest lot with lights, call non-emergency, and let someone else check. Because that night when she turned to me and asked, "Do they expect you?" it didn't sound like small talk. It sounded like a checklist. And I don't ever want to know what would have happened if I'd answered wrong. In June 2019, I was on the road between Austin and Colorado Springs for a break I'd convinced myself I deserved. My car was loaded the way I always pack it. Cooler under a towel, almonds in a baggie, laptop buckled into the backseat like a kid. Podcasts queued, directions folded under the visor just in case my phone decided to update at the wrong time. Past Amarillo, the land turned into a flat truth of wind turbines and sky arguments. I'd been on the road for hours when I saw him, a man standing by a cattle guard, hat brim curved, backpack at his feet. I did the math, the same math I always do. Mid-morning, empty road, sunlight too bright for tricks. I pulled over. "Where are you headed?" I asked. "Up a bit," he said, soft voice, not much accent. I let him in. He sat carefully, placed his backpack on the floor. He thanked me, but never gave his name. What he did give me was unease. Not by words, by where he looked. Not at me, not out the windshield, but at the rear window. Over and over, steady as breathing. "Bad run-in with cops?" I tried. "No," he said, "just making sure we're all right." He said it like it was a threat wrapped in politeness. We passed fence posts strung with old sneakers, a panhandle kind of shoe tree. I mentioned it. "Markings," he said, and kept watching that glass. After 20 minutes, I realized no one else had passed us. No cars coming at us, no trucks in the mirror. Nothing. That doesn't happen out there. I checked the odometer, my phone's blue dot, anything. Still just us. I tried to laugh it off. "Busy day, huh?" He finally spoke. "You see them yet?" "See who?" I asked. "They'll show," he said, eyes still on the glass. Another 10 miles. Still empty. My phone bars dropped to none. The radio faded into static and preachers muttering about storms. I started counting minutes like a kid afraid of the dark. I asked if he wanted me to drop him at the next stop. He looked at me then, really looked, eyes pale gray, and said, "Don't stop on the road. Go where there are lights. You'll know it when you see it." It took another 15 minutes, but then a blue sign. "Safety rest area, 1 mile." I turned without hesitation. "This fine?" I asked. He didn't answer. He seemed calmer, though, like a man whose bus was finally arriving. I pulled in under the curved roofs and parked near the picnic tables. turned to him, he was looking straight at me now, not at the glass. His eyes were pale enough to catch the dashboard glow. For the first time, he spoke more than a few clipped words. "You remind me of my sister," he said softly, like he was remembering her instead of telling me. "She used to drive this stretch at night and swore the road could listen. She's gone now, but I still hear her when the wind shifts. Maybe you've heard her too." I didn't know what to say. He kept going, calm, like a man unspooling a memory he'd been saving for the right ear. "My father said no road is ever empty. Even when you don't see the others, they're there, watching, waiting. Some of them ahead, some of them behind, and some above. My family's all scattered now, but I walk with them still. That's why I look back." He nodded at the rear glass, then back at me. "Don't mistake quiet for safety." Then he unbuckled the belt. He opened the door, stepped out, and shut it with that same gentle push he'd used when I picked him up. No look back, no goodbye. He just adjusted the strap of his backpack and walked across the lot toward the shadowed edge of the building, folding into the ordinary world like he'd been part of it all along. I sat there, staring at the passenger window. Inside the rest stop, families moved through the tornado displays, kids tugging sleeves, a couple arguing over a map. Life looked normal again, like it had been set up for me to rejoin after a scene I wasn't supposed to witness. At the gas station across the access road, the cashier asked, "Pump?" I asked if he'd seen a man walk through. He frowned, thought about it, and shook his head. Back on the highway, the silence broke. Trucks, minivans, a highway patrol. As if it had been like that the whole time. Later, when I told my sister, I gave her the light version. Picked up a man, got spooked, dropped him at a stop. She laughed and blamed the murder shows I watch. I laughed too, because it was easier than explaining his words. Don't mistake quiet for safety. And I can't stop replaying his face when he asked me, "You see them yet?" Not behind us, not in the mirror. The rear glass had been reflecting the sky. But some nights, I look at my own rear window. Not to check for who's behind me, to check if anyone or anything is above, waiting for someone willing to look up. If you thought the real danger wasn't the hitchhiker, but the fact that the ride kept going way too long, smash that like button, subscribe so you never miss the next scare, and tell me in the comments, would you have pulled over? And if you've ever wondered what kind of story actually shook me, not just my viewers, click now to watch 4 stories that genuinely messed me up when I first read them. Thanks for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.